Smart English. The smartest way to learn English.
Assalomu alaykum barchaga. Yana biz Smart Englishdan Akmaljon Husanov, and we've got today the guest is called Mr.
Bonk from Canada.
Bonk from Canada. We said we shall start the topic on random topics. Let's have the conversation on random different topics, and I think these topics will be very useful for Uzbek nations and typically particularly for Uzbek the youth, I believe. And today I'd love to ask you some questions, Christian, and you can respond to them. Let's talk about the commonly made mistakes by Uzbek students while they're learning English. What do you think they are, based on your experience here?
Well, there's quite a few of them. I've made some notes for today just to talk about a couple that are very common in terms of, let's start with pronunciation.
All right. Okay.
Yeah,
pronunciation.
So one common problem every student makes is with adding a syllable to the end of some plural forms. For example, friend as, book as, student as. Some of them have the idea that you need to add a separate syllable, and it's just one: students, friends, books, for example. A simple thing, very easy to fix, but it will affect your fluency if you constantly make that mistake. And it connects to another mistake which is very common, which is...
Oh, thank you. Let's stop here. Okay. And let me clarify the problem. What we are saying is there are two syllables, three syllable words, nouns basically, and whenever we are making them plural, we tend to emphasize the ending word, like friendes.
It's essentially adding a syllable that's not necessary. Friendes is not necessary, it's one syllable, friends.
All right. Demak, hurmatli o'quvchilar, tushunyapsizlarki, mana friendes deb turib oxirini cho'zishlik, o'sha yerga biz syllable, ya'ni bitta bo'g'in qo'shib qo'yishlik bo'lib qolyapti va bu sizni fluency'ngizga, ravon gapirishingizga xalaqit qiladi degan ma'noda birinchi xatolikni aytdi. Ya'ni otlarni ko'plikka aylantirayotganimizda oxirgi joyini, ya'ni friendes deb cho'zmasdan, balki how to say it in the correct way, like friend and plural is a friend and plural is.
So for example, friend, friends, student, students, book, books. A lot of students have the unfortunate habit of adding a syllable, book as, friend as. That's not necessary.
All right, thank you very much. And yeah, you were saying that it connects to the second problem.
Yeah, another easy thing to be tricked by with word endings in English is ed endings when you make a plural form. And because there's actually three sounds that are quite separate. And again, I've made a note here. One is, for example, married. Describe a married man. Some students will say married and add a syllable. It's married. It's just a D sound. But other times when you have ed, you will have a separate sound. For example, interested. That would be an example where you don't say it as one sound. You have to add a syllable. Do you see what I mean? The difference? So interested, but married.
I see.
They're spelled the same, but the sound is different.
So when we speak about married, we shouldn't say married,
right?
But we shall say married.
Married.
But with interested, we shall add syllable.
Yes.
Interested.
Exactly, and it can be tricky because the spelling is the same. You just have to learn it from habit, from seeing it, practicing it over and over again. Some words have a separate syllable, some don't. And then there's a third issue. Some words with an ed ending have a T sound. For example, attached. Not attached, not attached with a hard sound, but attached. So in fact, there's three possible pronunciations available, but for only one ending, which is spelled ed. They all look the same, but there's three sounds, and many students confuse them, which is understandable because it's three different ways to say anything. And as I said before, the only way to learn it really is to practice and to be exposed to it over and over again until you know it by memory.
I see. So you don't suggest any kind of rules to learn, rules, regulations based on those syllabuses or based on those endings. You rather suggest them to practice.
This is one example where there aren't really rules. We teach this from the book in IELTS, and it's a pronunciation area that students just find tricky. We do an area where you simply have lists of the words and then you practice doing them in different order so that you learn them. But there's really not a strict rule that you can attach to it. It's one of those things that's just a habit. You have to learn from habit and from being exposed to it until you learn it, basically.
Even if there are rules for these kind of mistakes, I believe it is easier for us to practice and learn. You call it shadowing, like listen and repeat, listen and repeat. This helps a lot rather than remembering the rules and trying to, while we are speaking English, while we are expressing ourselves in English, we don't have time to think about the rule and put it precisely, implement it to the specific word, you know. I think your suggestion is reasonable, and we had better listen and repeat, like shadowing, and it happens automatically. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And certainly listening to English materials helps. If you listen to podcasts and movies and expose yourself, you hear that native speakers never say friend does, for example, and you'll hear the way that automatically we switch to different forms: attached, married, interested, right? So
Wonderful,
basically, yeah, rules are, as you said, it's too difficult to learn that way, even if there were consistent rules.
Let me recap it in Uzbek so
please.
that the audience will be able to understand more fully. Hozir biz aytayotgan gapimiz shuki, misol uchun married deganda married. Deylik, o'sha I'm married, I'm not a single guy deymiz-ku. O'shunga o'xshash gaplarda misol married deb oxirini cho'zmaslik kerak. Ammo interested da cho'zishga majbur bo'lamiz. Xo'p, endi bu yoqda bir savol to'g'ri. Ya'ni ba'zi tugashliklarda t bilan tugatishlik bor. Misol uchun attached emas. Xo'p, endi albatta sizda savol bor. Kechirasiz aka, bu o'zi undoq deysiz, bundoq deysiz, qandoq qilib eslab qolamiz desa, buni eng eslab qolish yaxshi uslublardan biri shadowing. Whenever you listen to any kind of word, you need to repeat. Dedik, ya'ni o'shani podkastlardan tinglab turib yoki biz lug'atlarga yozib tinglab turib orqasidan takrorlashlik shadowing deyiladi. Ushbu uslub eng yaxshi uslub deyapti. Mr. Bonkni ham bizga bo'lgan maslahati shundan iborat bo'ldi. Ya'ni qonun qoidalarni yodlashlik emas, balki uni orqasidan takrorlashlik miyani o'zida yaxshi qoldiradi degan gap bo'ldi. Yeah, I just recapped the points. The next point you were saying again?
Oh, well, you asked about some other common mistakes, and I'll give you a simple word order one. Do you ever say to someone when you're asking a favor, don't you mind?
Oh.
Don't you mind calling me later today? Don't you mind giving me a ride to work?
All right.
What's wrong with that?
Don't you mind? I think it sounds it sounds okay to me. Like.
Okay. I hear it a lot from students, and I want to correct it because it is, as you said, a common mistake. It's do you mind? Do you mind if I come over later? Do you mind if I help you with your homework? The reason it can be confused, I think some students confuse it, is because there's also an informal version where people say, you don't mind if I do this? And that confuses the word order. That's not really grammatically correct. It's more of a, I guess, a rhetorical question. When you ask a question there where you don't expect a response, don't you mind if I help you? It's not as common. If you're confused, I would stick with just using the grammatically correct form, which is, do you mind?
All right. So let me clarify it.
Yes.
So what we are saying is, if I say, don't you mind if I help you with this thing, it sounds a bit odd. It doesn't sound natural to you. As a native English speaker,
no.
It doesn't sound natural to you.
No, the natural forms for us would be simply, do you mind, or simply, you don't mind if I do this. Yeah.
Fantastic. Ajoyib. Bir zo'r nuqtani aytdi hozir Bonk. Aytilgan nuqta shuki, qarang, agarki bizda endi o'zbek tilida qarshi emasmisiz agar sizga yordam bersam, deymiz-ku, u narsani so'zma-so'z tarjima qilsangiz ingliz tiliga, don't you mind if I help you bo'ladi. Ammo siz don't you mind desangiz, o'zbek tilidan to'g'ri tarjima qilgan bo'lsangizda, bizga, ya'ni inglizlarga tinglanishi bu g'alati deyapti. Unda nima deyishimiz kerak desangiz, do you mind? Let's say, do you mind like if I help you? Agar sizga yordam bersam qarshi emasmisiz? Do you mind bilan aytishlik yaxshiroq bo'ladi va bu tabiiyroq chiqadi degan bo'ldi. And with do you mind, you suggest another one as well, like
yeah, there's also you don't mind. This relates to something called question tags. You've probably studied question tags.
Yeah.
There's a strange pattern in English where you ask a question two different ways. One case when you think you know the answer, and one case when you don't. So the more polite version is, are you a teacher? It means I don't know the answer. But if you say to somebody, you're a teacher, aren't you? That implies that you expect that you know the response. So the word order actually changes the tone of the question a little bit. This is kind of in the same vein, I guess.
So can I say like, you don't mind if I invite you to the coffee? Is this right English?
Yeah. That's more informal though. Do you mind is the more correct form. I don't want to encourage students to use the second form because I think they get confused and then they change the word order to don't you mind.
So the correct one is, do you mind if I invite you for the coffee? This is right English.
Yes.
You don't mind if I invite you for the coffee?
You don't mind is, like I said, with question tags, it's a little more informal and
I see.
How can I say, it's kind of, it could be rude in the wrong context because it implies that you know the answer. So it's like something you would say to a friend. It's saying, I know what the answer will be in advance.
Oh, I see. So, then You don't mind if I invite you for the coffee desa, ya'ni qarshi emasmisiz agar sizni kofega taklif qilsam degani bu informal, ya'ni do'stlarimiz bilan norasmiy suhbatlarda aytsak bo'ladi. Do you mind if I invite you for the coffee? Bu agar kofega chaqirsam qarshi emasmisiz deyilgani bu rasmiy tilda aytilinadi dedi. So it was wonderful. We learned a lot. Thank you very much, Christian, for today's information. And I think we shall do the recap. Like we learned about first mistakes in plurals. Yeah. Would you mind? Do you mind recapping that, please?
That's okay. We will talk about different types of common mistakes. These are just two that come to mind. I have a lot of students who do speaking presentations every day. And one thing that even the most advanced students always do is forgetting that you don't need that added syllable, friend does, student does. So please remove that if you're using it. You don't need to. You can always check and review the rules in your book to find out, but you don't need that extra syllable in most cases. And of course, like I said, word order, say, do you mind if you're not sure. That's the standard grammatical structure to use. If in doubt, stick with that one.
All right. Thank you very much, Christian. Today I also learned something from you, and it was a fantastic session. I hope it will continue in the future.
Yes.
All right. See you guys.
Thank you.
The best. And please, whenever you've got some time, you can always come to YouTube and you can watch our series.
Follow us on social media.